All right. Hello, Idiots on Parade, the Too Ugly for TV podcast, the vodcast version, the bonus version. Hello, Barrett.
Hey, how are you, sir?
I am well. To anyone tuning in for the first time, that is Barrett Antar Goodwin, musician in Philadelphia. I am Nathan Timmel, comedian in Iowa City. We have known each other for more years than should be legal, and we talk. And hopefully you tune in and go, oh, well, that was kind of interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I'll see. Today I want to start with the phrase, we're going to talk about fear, and I want to start with the phrase bury the lead, which I'm sure you're familiar with, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
To anybody that for any reason wouldn't be, it means there's a big story on hand, but instead of opening with the big story, you open with something different and you hide the big story. It's called burying the lead.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm going to do that by, since we're talking about fear, I'm going to talk about the most afraid I have ever been in my life. And it's interesting because it was post-event, if that makes sense. We are speaking on February 10th, and I'm pretty sure what I'm about to talk about took place in February. My wife is much better with dates than I am. It was 4 years ago, probably. I think my son was 2 years old, and he took an ambulance ride to the emergency room. I'll backtrack. He one day had a seal cough. He is what we called it. He was he was breathing like that, and we could see every time he tried to inhale or exhale as he coughed, we could see his ribs. He was having problems breathing, and so we took him to urgent care. And they said, oh, not a big deal. I don't remember exactly what they did, but they said he should be fine. If this happens, maybe they gave him a steroid shot, or not a shot, but they said if this happens again, two things you can do are take him into the bathroom and turn on the shower, get some steam into his lungs, or the exact opposite, take him outside because it's winter, and cold air should snap him out of it. So fine. Several days later, maybe a week later, he gets the cough back again. And so my wife tries both options, bathroom, outside, nothing's changing. So she says, I'm going to take him to urgent care. And this is all happening in the morning because I remember I had to take my daughter to preschool. And she takes him to urgent care. I take my daughter to preschool, and she calls she's only been there like 5 minutes. And she says, they want to call an ambulance. They want him to go to the emergency room. And I immediately go into denial, which is this isn't happening denial. It was more like, why would they want to take him to the emergency room? He's fine. They said if he coughs like that, it's not a big deal. It was more a confused denial than an outright, this isn't happening. And so I said, it doesn't matter what happened. The long and the short of it is you listen to your doctors. Apparently he had really low oxygen levels. So the breathing was affecting him, obviously. So I drop my daughter off, and in the time it takes me to drop her off and head back to urgent care, I pull up just in time to see my 2-year-old son being wheeled out of the office on a gurney. And there's an ambulance there, and they throw him on, and I'm just looking at him. It sort of freaks me out when you see just a 2-year-old, a tiny, tiny child, a toddler, being taken into an ambulance. And my wife and I make eye contact, and she's freaking out. And I'm still sort of in denial mode, or just thinking, oh, okay, well, good. It's good we live in America. He's going to get in an ambulance. He's fine. No big deal. Maybe that's a coping mechanism. I don't know. Follow the ambulance to the hospital best I can. It loses me really quick because it gets to run red lights and cool shit like that. Park the car, make my way down to the emergency room, and they're going to admit him into the hospital. And again, I'm sort of like, oh, okay, well, good. Let's get this banged out. Admit him to the hospital. I don't know exactly where he goes. It was not just a children's ward, but a specialty ward. And his fever peaked somewhere around 104, maybe even higher, 106.
Pretty high.
Yeah, not good. And he was there for 3 days. And at some point they pulled the Dr. House, I think Gregory House from the TV show. I can't remember if it's Gregory or not, but what he always did was throw a wide swath of antibiotics at it and see if that knocks out the problem, because they couldn't figure out what it was. And that's actually worked. After several days, they just hit him with a ton of antibiotics. He cleared up. The doctor freaked out. She's like, "Oh, look at Truman, he's good." And she said something that was insane, because for 3 days, they were the most wonderfully professional people in the world. They'd come in and say, "Okay, well, we can't figure this out. It's not this. Let's try this. Okay, well," and I just, in the entire time, I'm like, "Oh, good, they're on it." And after he was better, she sort of admitted, in a way, one of those outbursts. She said, like, "Oh, we couldn't figure out what it was. We were all so worried about him." And that, after the fact, I mean, if she had done that during the the time he was in the bed, I don't know if it was the intensive care unit, whatever you want to call it, wherever he was, if they had come in and said, "Holy shit, what's wrong with this kid?" they know that the parents are going to freak out. Instead, I was just there, as I said, for 3 days going, "Okay, we're in the best country in the world. We got the best medical care," even though I know that's bullshit, but I know it's a modern country. Thank God we're not in Ethiopia, to throw Ethiopia under the bus. Sorry, Ethiopia. But when the best, at the end, they think that it was bacterial pneumonia. They never really put a handle on it, but they said, "We're going to go with bacterial pneumonia." And they released him. And I think it was that night, it all caught up to me at once. The idea that I could have lost my son, that they didn't know what was going on, that here I was confidently ignorant that everything was going to be okay. And yet, whenever they would leave the room, they would go have hushed discussions on, why isn't this kid getting better? What are we doing? What do we need to try? And it was a Hail Mary to throw a ton of antibiotics into his system. And it freaked me the fuck out. The idea that my son could have died, that they didn't know what was going on. And as I said, it's a strange fear to happen after the fact, after everything was okay, that everything then hit me harder than it did while it was occurring. And I don't know if that's natural. I don't know if that's normal, but that's what happened to me. And that's how I buried the lead, because the big story this week is you, my friend, went through a pretty interesting life event over the past month. Anybody that tunes in regularly, and I actually did get a couple messages asking, "Where have you guys been?" And I didn't say anything until this week after the fact, with, I think, one friend who I said, "Okay, everything's fine. I think I can tell you this." Take it away.
Well, I suppose I wasn't prepared to talk about this, but I suppose we can.
Sorry, I thought that was a given when we spoke last week. I said, let's talk about your life event. It's very big, so apologies.
No, it's okay. I mean, I suppose it was a very similar situation. I had gone to get a COVID test for a gig that I had. A studio session. It was like a live session, like back in the day, where everybody's sitting in the same room and shit, But we had to be all
sitting in the same room.
Right. And we all had to be masked up, but we all had to get COVID tests ahead of time. So we did, and they said, "Hey, you have a little bit of a heart murmur here. You need to go have this checked out." And I was like, "Okay, whatever." So since I've been in Philly, I have a new primary. So I went to my new primary, and she said, "Yes, you do indeed have a heart murmur. You need to go see this cardiologist." The cardiologist said, "Yes, you do indeed have one. You need to go see this other guy so we can see what's going on." And I guess he injected some dye into me that showed the way my blood circulated. Like, you ever drink really cold water in the morning, like after not having had anything to drink, like since like 8 o'clock the night before or something, and you
Yeah, I
drink
try
it,
not to. I usually go room temperature, but I've
okay.
had the sensation.
But you feel it go down your esophagus, you feel it spread out in your stomach. You're like, "Oh, that's where my stomach is, and that's where this is," right? So that's basically what happened. I could feel the heat circulating through my body, and it's like that determined my rate of blood flow, I suppose, or whatever it was. And then they told me I needed surgery. And they said, listen, one of your valves isn't working right. And it's a congenital thing. I think it's the same thing. My mother died when she was just under 50. And they're like, listen, it's probably the same thing, you know? So they went in and they set up a time to deal with it. So they went in and
Let me
they,
interrupt quickly, because that right there is, as you mentioned, you got this, it started with a COVID test. We are in the middle of a pandemic, and at least for quite a while, there was no elective surgery. They were trying to keep the hospitals open for COVID patients. So this was not a matter of, oh, you got something going on with your heart. Okay, well, in July, when things clear up, let's get you taken care of. They
I
seem
mean,
to have
I could
said,
have, they told me I had about 18 months, about 12 to 18 months to live if I didn't do anything about it. And if I
oh,
did,
yeah.
then I could live a nice, healthy life. And so
And you didn't feel like
I,
pushing it to, all right, let's do it at month 17 and see how that works.
yeah, exactly. No, because I had started to feel short of breath. If I would like run up and down a flight of stairs really fast, I'd be more tired than I should be. Do you know what I mean? If I went jogging or something like that, I'd be more tired than I should be. And it's something that's very similar. So I
See,
started to have symptoms.
I was going to say, I talked about burying the lead, and I think that might be the lead right there. Black people jog?
Exactly. Well, not after Ahmaud Arbery, we've stopped.
Jesus Christ.
You know, after that, we decided to give a break.
Wow, that was fantastically dark. Holy shit, I am proud of you. That was, wow. Well done, my friend. Oh
Hey,
God.
one of my best friends is a comedian. Who do you think I get it from?
Uh, See, in my
So,
head, I was thinking Anchorman and going, oh, I'm going jogging or maybe yogging. So, I was just in my head thinking that, and then you took it to a fantastic place. Holy shit, that's horrible. So, 18 months to live.
so they basically said, "Listen, we have to go in and fix this valve, and then you'll be literally have another 50 years of life." You know what I mean? Like once it's done, it's literally I go back to normal and live a normal life. And so they they did the repair, and the anesthesia had a crazy effect on me. I was knocked out for like 3 days.
Hmm.
Like I went in on a Thursday and I woke up Sunday evening. Do you know what I mean? I went in like Thursday at 5 in the morning. The surgery was at like 9:30 or something, and they knocked me out, which was pretty cool, I suppose. And
Yeah,
I didn't wake up.
I had a colonoscopy last year because, we're of that age where the finger tickle and the colon and all that.
Yeah, nice.
And I remember the anesthesia because I was laying on the table having a perfectly normal conversation, talking to the doctors, saying something mildly racist, probably. And then I woke up.
Right.
It's like when I think back, I'm like, wait a second. I remember being clear and lucid and then waking up. There was no drowsy,
Yeah.
there was no effect. It was a switch. I was having a conversation, gone.
Yeah, and then you were out.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's basically what happened. And I
And
woke
you
up
said yours was,
Sunday.
there's a difference between sticking a tube in your butt, and you needed to be under, because if
Yeah,
I wake
out,
up,
out.
oh no, he's got a tube in his butt. You
Correct.
wake up, no
Yeah,
bueno.
and no, so they knocked me the fuck out. And I woke up on Sunday evening, basically.
Hmm.
Like I was out for like that crazy reaction to it. But I stayed in the hospital for a few days and everything was good. So they sent me home, and my sister came to get me because I was going to go kind of rehab at her place. And I started having these weird kind of seizure things. Like I was fully conscious and my eyes didn't roll in the back of my head, but it was really weird. And then so she said, "Listen, bro, we're going to the emergency room." So we went to the emergency room, and so they ran some tests and shit. And while I was in there, I was doing basically almost like what your son was doing. Like I couldn't, no matter what I did, I couldn't get enough oxygen. And I was like, and I couldn't, like, I could feel it going in and it just wasn't circulating right. And I guess apparently where the valve is right over the electrical system in the heart. So when it get with the repair they did caused some swelling, which caused some things to just fire out of order and stuff. And it was like a near-death experience every 5 to 7 minutes for about 2 hours, you know? And I was just like, and it sounds overly dramatic, but like
No, it doesn't sound overly
you
dramatic at
really
all.
like it really feels like you're gonna die. Like that's what it feels like. It feels like you're gonna die. Like it feels like you're drowning, you know, except you're breathing, but nothing is happening.
I'm going to
Like,
say something horrible, not really, but because I'm not trying to compare apples to oranges, I'm just trying to relate in the cheapest, shittiest way I can. I remember clear as a bell the first time I ever had the wind knocked out of me. I was a kid. It was at my grandmother's house. Someone threw a basketball and hit me right in the chest. And I'd never heard of the situation of having the air knocked out of you, the wind knocked out of you, the lungs collapsing and shooting air. And the idea of, I had no idea what was going on because I was just a kid. It's not a good feeling. So to be an adult and to know, wait, I didn't just have the wind knocked out of me, yet I feel like I'm not trying to say I've experienced it, but anybody that's had the wind knocked out of them knows it is an incredibly fearful feeling to not be able to get oxygen.
It's like that for like 10 or 15 seconds at a clip.
So I don't think you're being overly dramatic at all.
Oh, it was terrible. It was awful. It was awful. It's not something. Here's the thing. If you've ever had a near-death experience, when you're done with it, you want to bottle that feeling and sell it to people. Do you know what I mean? Because like, here's what happens. Like, you think you're gonna die, and in that moment, really many things become really clear. Like, your vision gets super sharp because you start thinking, like, you're thinking about like your life and how you're not going to have it and how you're not ready to go and all this other obvious shit. But you also think about the things that you actually want to achieve and the people you're not going to be able to say goodbye to. And it's only a handful, right? You may know 1,000 people, but really only maybe 10 tops, show up in that moment that you're like, oh no, I didn't get to tell this person this thing, or what about this, or what about this? You know what I mean? It's like
I didn't get to tell Bob to fuck off one last time.
I mean, that's part of it, like I didn't bang that chick in high school. What was I thinking?
Oh, there's a path I could go down. The number of chicks I have not had sex with, that would be in the thousands. There would be you talk about the people. If I were to go down the women I wanted to have sex with but didn't.
I mean, it's always the ones you have sex with are cool. The ones you shouldn't have had sex with and did are cool. It's the ones you wanted to and didn't through your own fault. Those are the ones that stick with you ultimately. It's ridiculous.
Failure always sticks with, like they interviewed Rams coach Dick Vermeil. I think he won the Super Bowl twice. And they said, what does it feel to be like a Super Bowl winning coach? And he goes, you forget. He said, the failures, they stick with you. Yeah. Like the time you made it to the playoffs and lost. He said, that's what sticks with you. I'm like,
yeah. Yeah, because you feel like there's something that you could have done that would have made it, and maybe it is. Like I don't believe in, like, that's the other thing that like this kind of experience shows you. Like you can't just constantly live in the past. But that being said, you can learn from it, right? Like, okay, so you win a couple Super Bowls, then you make it to the playoffs and you don't. Well, what did you do differently? Like maybe the other team was just better than you, right? Like that's just what happens. Maybe the wind was blowing, the stars were aligned and shit. None of it's your fault. But most of life, like I think we forget how much say we have in our own lives. You know what I mean? Like when they say, somebody said it, maybe it was Stallone, the brilliant philosopher Sylvester Stallone. I think he said
He
something
did
to the
write Rocky.
effect
He's
of,
not a dumb guy. He's
no,
a good
I
writer.
mean, but I think he said, you're only in the prime of your life once. Don't waste it.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? And that's a real thing because most of us don't deal with things until we're in crisis mode. You know what I mean? Oh, my doctor told me I have super high cholesterol and I'm gonna have a heart attack. So now I'm gonna switch to turkey bacon and I'm gonna walk on the treadmill for 38 seconds a day. You know what I mean? It's like that's when, like
Right.
that's our big move, you know what I mean? And it's like, yeah, but like there's a way, like, eat healthy, exercise, keep your stress level low. It's kind of obvious, and everybody tells you this your whole life. Eat right, get your checkups right, like do basic shit. But if you actually do that stuff, it really makes the future of your life much better. Do you know what I mean? Like it allows for you to fully enjoy the prime of your life and then also not have a fucked up future. You know what I mean? If that makes sense.
It does, and this is going to be a weird relation, but stay with me.
Mm-hmm.
What you made me think of is wealth and
Mm-hmm.
how
Yeah.
back in the
Perfect
day,
example.
wealthy people were plump because food was scarce. So if you had money,
Mm-hmm.
you ate up and you were a little fatter, and the peasants were starving. And we
Mm-hmm.
flipped that script. Today,
Yeah.
wealthy people tend to, like Jeff Bezos, for example. That guy's a rail, and Bill Gates is not, a model, but he's also fit. You can eat organic. Um, you don't have to eat processed foods. Whereas in rural America, you have dollar stores and they don't sell produce. Or the inner
Right.
city too. I mean, anywhere where
Yeah.
there's poverty, the trailing.
Any place where poor people live.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
you're buying Chef Boyardee, not a banana. You're buying something that will last and have leftovers. You don't have a leftover with fruit salad because it goes bad within an hour.
Yeah.
So today we flipped the script where wealthy people are much more fit and look better, and people with less are generally, and all Americans are fat, but in terms of taking care of your life, people that cannot afford to take care of their life, not through any fault of their own, they buy what they can, and it's reflected in a physical
I mean, dude,
representation.
I'll do you one, not better, but to give you another example of it. When I was in my mid 20s after college, and I moved back to my folks' place, and I was doing the whole New Brunswick thing, like playing in New Brunswick and kind of figuring out how to be a working musician. And there was a place called Save Right around the corner, and they had chicken legs and chicken wings and thighs and shit raw for 49 cents a pound. And I was like, 49 cents a pound? That's awfully cheap. All right, I'll get it. And then I was in like the regular, stop and shop store, and it was like 250 a pound. I was like, well, what's the fucking difference? It looks the same. So one day I got some of the 250 a pound stuff, and I got some of the 49 cent a pound stuff. And I cooked them both and I ate them both. Like separate time, like one day, one the next day. And here's what I can tell you, that after I ate the 49 cent a pound one, I felt a little jittery. I felt like not bad, but just hyper jittery, like weird, like, and my brain was a little foggy, and I was like, oh, that's weird. Okay, whatever. Then the next day I had the other stuff, and none of that stuff happened. And I was like, even if you try to be healthy when you're living, I'm going to get the raw chicken, I'm going to bake it, and I'm going to do this. The quality of it is just so significantly worse. You know what I mean? Aside from the fact that bologna sandwiches and Wonder Bread and Miracle Whip, you could feed a family of 8 for $4. You know what I mean? Like a pack of bologna, some Miracle Whip, and some Wonder Bread will make a sandwich. You know what I mean? Like aside from the sheer volume that you can get if you buy cheap shit, even the stuff that you think is good, like the broccoli has
It's
more
still lower
chemicals in it.
quality. Yeah.
It's like even if you're trying, you can't
You
pull it
made
off, I
me
don't think.
you made me think of Super Size Me.
Yeah.
Morgan Spurlock, he talked about what you talked about feeling jittery. He talked about the rush of when you eat at McDonald's, he said, you feel really good. Like whatever they put in that food, you feel great until you crash and then you
Yeah.
want it again.
Yeah.
And
Has a highly addictive quality to it. It's like a drug. Yeah.
right. And it's you're talking about the rate of inflation in life, how, you know, the cost of movies have gone up, the cost of healthcare. We still have a dollar menu, which has been running for 25 plus years, the 99-cent burger, and that should scare
Yeah.
people. That should set off red flags. For kids, they just think it's great, like, wow, 99 cents. But if you're an adult and you want to feed your kid, there should be something in you that says, wait a second, the price of everything has gone up over the course of my life except this.
Yeah.
How do they make this so cheap?
Yeah. Howard Chicken McNuggets the same price they were when I was a teenager.
Right. And does that
Right.
make me want to put that in my body? And the answer
Right.
should
Wasn't
be
it
no.
like $5 for 20 of them? Hasn't it been that like since we were
Yeah.
kids? Like $5 for 20 McNuggets? It hasn't changed.
No.
Like literally it hasn't changed in like 25 years. You're absolutely right. Yeah, that's like terrifying. So yeah, I think that even if you try, if you're in a certain demographic, it's just going to be really difficult for you to be healthy. Do you know what I mean? And then, you know, if you're in the inner city, I suppose you have the added bonus of not necessarily having easy access to nature. Right? If you're poor and you live in the country, you have access to nature theoretically. Do you know what I mean?
But you don't have
So
access to healthcare because the only
right.
doctor is 2 hours away. You know,
Right. The only right.
there are
Here's what I
trade-offs
will
everywhere
say.
you live.
Right. So we can come back to it, right? So when my dad was in the hospital for he had pancreatic cancer, the way the doctors in Jersey dealt with him was atrocious. It was
Hmm.
disgusting. Like literally it's disgusting. These aren't bad hospitals. Robert Wood Johnson's a pretty reasonable hospital. You know what I mean? Things like that. It was awful. My medical experience here from my primary up all the way to my cardiac surgeon, amazing. Really amazing. Everybody's nice. Answer my questions. My cardiologist calls to check up on me. Hey, just call and see how you're doing. He'll spend 10, 15 minutes on the phone with me. And I'm like, what is going on here? Like, maybe it's just like they've gotten such a bad rap that they all have a new platform and it seems genuine, but it's a bunch of bullshit. But it doesn't seem like it. It seems like not that they genuinely care like I'm their friend or anything like that, but like they genuinely seem to have they're just nicer. It's not even about care and concern, they're just nicer.
Well, let me jump in there because knowing nothing of either situation, yours or your father's, I can approach it from the outside from maybe a different angle. And what I think is in many situations in life, everything is top down.
Mm-hmm.
And so who runs the organization and how it's run filters into the experiences you have on a personal level. So
Absolutely.
if there's a
Absolutely.
piece of shit in charge in Jersey at a hospital, that can filter through the entire system and infect everyone so that everyone has a bad attitude. Whereas in Iowa, when we took my son in, everyone was
Mm-hmm.
just fantastic. Like you said, from start to finish, we bumped into
Yeah.
we bumped into her twice with Truman, like once in the summer, like I said, it happened in February, and she's like, "There's the little man," like just just memory, like she didn't recognize us as much. Like, wait, you look familiar. Like, oh, I know him, and we're like, yeah, he had like, yes, I remember. We were so relieved, like it, yeah, just enthused about life. And
Yeah.
I don't want to blame any healthcare system, but it could be a
Mm.
top-down attitude.
I think it's that. I think it's also location based. I think the closer like New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, people are just kind of dicks. You know what I mean? Like, and I don't say that in a mean
Famously
way.
so. No, New
Right.
York wears it as a
Like
badge of pride.
New Yorkers, right. Like, what the fuck you looking at? You know what I mean? Like, what are you waving at me for saying hello? Like, they actually like it's a badge of honor for them to be assholes. You know what I mean? Like, hey, we're New Yorkers. We're allowed to be dickheads because that's who we are. Blah. And it's like, yeah, but like when it comes to like medicine and shit, like why be bought? Why? Do you
Hmm.
know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like every cop, every medical person, half the club owners, most of the musicians, like they're just people are just assholes and they think it's cool. Like they're proud of themselves for that. Coming to your wedding, stopped at my grandmother's house in
Cuyahoga
Ohio.
Falls, Ohio.
Yeah. So we're
Akron.
driving up. Yeah, we're driving up, and I guess we had to pass through Indiana, if I'm not mistaken. And the
Yeah,
speed
well, it
limit
goes
there
from
was,
where you are. Well, from when you were in Jersey, it would go Pennsylvania, Ohio,
yep,
Indiana, Illinois, Iowa.
there you go. Perfect. So we were coming out of Indiana, going into Illinois, right? If that makes sense.
Hmm.
And the speed limit is 70 there.
Yes.
I was doing 85. So, because it's the middle of the night, I got a white woman next to me sleeping in the car.
It's the middle of the night, which means you got lights on. Your car is easy to see, easily
Yeah.
different.
And I'm flying down the road. Cop pulls me over, and
As they tend to do.
I know I'm gonna get a ticket. I know I am because I'm out of state. I can't fight it, and he's got me dead to rights. Right. And I got a white girl sleeping in the car next to me. Right. Which, probably it may matter, may not, I'm just being silly. But like, so he comes back, he hands me a warning. He goes, "Hey man, really, speed limit's 70 here. That's plenty fast enough. A little advice for you. Just set your cruise control at 70 and just have a good day." And he let me go. And I was like, what is going on here? Like, what the fuck is going on here? Because I've been harassed in Jersey, Connecticut, New York, like those three places in particular, for going 5 miles over the speed limit. They'd yank me out of the car, throw me up against it, throw all my shit out looking for drugs. Like, it was a fucking nightmare. The fucking nightmare. Almost every time I got pulled over, it'd be some bullshit thing that I wasn't doing, or it'd be it'd be a real thing. But 6 miles over the speed limit, like, come on, like I know that I'm 6 miles over the speed limit, so you got me. But I'm kind of just going the flow of traffic. You know what I mean? Like, and that doesn't make it right. But here is a guy who had me dead to rights, 15 over, out of state and everything else, no way to contest it. I just would have paid it and put money in their pockets. And he was like, have a nice day. And then there's other places where I end up in court and they go, "We're going to hit you with this, 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 this. We're going to give you 8 points for this." I'm like, 8 points? What are you, crazy? Or you can plead it down to 4 if you just agree to this. And I'm like,
If you
like
just agree
just
to
a
pay the
fucking,
fine, that's
right,
generally what
just
it
a
is
fucking scam.
we won't hit
Yeah,
your insurance. We just want your money.
right. And I'm just like a working guy who was late to work one day. I used to play in a church. And so I'm going on, and I was speeding a little bit, and I was. So he had me. But I was just like, when I got to court and they gave me my options, like, I was like, that's not a choice. Do you know what I mean? That's not a choice. Like, that's like, it's an obvious, you're just going to take my $500 and that's what you're going to do so that I can get out of here. But I'm like, I'm just a working guy, just trying to get to work, man. Like, trying to get to work and pay some bills. And like, why aren't you guys going after criminals? Like, there's criminals that you could actually be going after. I talked to my dad about it, and he said something funny but true. He said, "Son, criminals don't pay." He said they don't pay.
Yeah,
Like, you know what I
discipline.
mean? They don't pay. They don't pay their tickets. They don't pay their fines. They don't do stuff like that. It's regular people who actually pay that stuff.
Yeah.
And so that's why they go after regular people. And I was so mad, but I got to tell you, man, out here, I haven't had any dealings with the Philly cops, so whatever, like, knock on wood. But like the Philly medical people, world of difference. World of difference. Just
Well, Philly
and
cops are
and I wonder if
probably still
yeah,
behaving since blowing up that city block for a move back in the 80s.
yeah. I mean, I think it's also just a matter of where you are in Philly,
Yeah.
right? Like if you're in North Philly, I imagine the cops aren't super nice, right? If you're where I am, I'm in Mount Airy. I imagine they're a bit nicer. You know what I mean? It's a higher tax bracket, so they're, you know what I mean? Like you get what you pay for ultimately. Like when
Just
when
like
people
food.
complain, right? Exactly. But when people complain about cops and they're like, the cops in our town in our city do this, and then other people go, well, "That's not the law. The cops are in my town." It's like, yeah, it's the best. It's like the best doctors end up in the best hospitals. You know what I mean? They don't end up in the fly by night clinics. You know what I mean? You know, that's just not how it works. And the best cops don't end up, you know, patrolling the shittiest parts of an area. Do you know what I mean? The best cops end up in the best areas. And so it could just be an infrastructure thing. Like they could be like, you
Well,
know what I mean? Like we
also,
talk about police violence and stuff, but it could largely just be that the shitty cops end up in the shittier areas. You know what I
it,
mean? Like
yeah,
it might
because
just be that simple, you know. I mean, that's too simple, but that might be a huge part of it. I don't know.
too simple, but it also goes back to what we were saying about being in control of our own destiny. Um, I'm, I got to talk to someone in the Navy once. I'm doing shows for the military, and he was higher rank. He wasn't up to major or anything, but he was wasn't a private. And I can't remember how we got on this discussion, but he said the military is easy. You just put your head down and go to work. I mean, they talk about people that flame out or they don't like scrubbing potatoes and they hate washing the swabbing the deck with a toothbrush. But the thing is, once you do that, the guys above you go, huh, all right, he's got tenacity. You know, he squares his shoulders and does what he's told. And nobody likes scrubbing a deck with a toothbrush. Nobody likes getting in trouble or washing potatoes or any of the shit aspects of the military. He said, but if you do it, if you put in your time and do it for a few months, the instant you get away from that, you're like, you're set. He said, I'm going to do 20 years and get out. I've already got it in front of me. He said, so many people flame out in the beginning because it is hard. He said, once you get over that hump, and I'm relating this completely poorly, and any police officer can come on and tell me to fuck off, but it could be the same thing where you come into the force and you either have a plan of action to you see your career in the future and you work toward it, or you don't and you end up, like, oh yeah, he's got the shit shift. Or if you have an attitude problem where you don't rub elbows with the right people, you get the shit shift in the
Yeah,
shit neighborhood. Who knows?
yeah. I mean, it could be something as simple as that. I mean, it really could be. You know,
Let's wrap this around to where we started though, because by saying that, I thought of my current greatest fear, because we started talking about fear. And well, before I continue, you said that you almost had the same thing after it was over, especially after that second experience. Is that when everything sort of hit you? Because when I talked to you pre-surgery, you I would say you were about, just hearing your voice, I would say you were about 85% you. You weren't
mm-hmm.
panicked, you weren't afraid, but I could hear in your voice that you were hesitant. You're like, okay, I got to do this. I got to get it done. Not happy about it, but I'm going to do it. You weren't like, oh shit, dude, I got to get heart surgery. This sucks. I'm so worried. After you came through it, did you look back, or did it hit you like it hit me, where like, wow, that really could have been it? Or is that what was happening in the emergency room? Or what was the outcome basically to get back on that track? And then I have
Here's what
another
I'll
thought when it
say.
comes to.
I'll say when I was in the hospital, every doctor that I dealt with, most of the nurses and nurse practitioners, I said the same thing to them, particularly the doctors, but pretty much everyone. I said, listen, there are a lot simpler ways to make $250,000 a year. There really are, you know? And I said, so I really appreciate what you guys do because you didn't have to do this. And I'm normally a grin and bear it, grit your teeth, right? Just like start scrubbing the fucking deck. Just get that shit over with and move on with your fucking life. I'm normally that guy. But there is no amount of visualization, vision board, positive thinking that I could have done that would have gotten me through this. At least if there is, I don't know the techniques, right? And I said, so you guys legitimately saved my life. And you could have been doing any other thing you want to do with your life. You're all smart people. Some of you are attractive, but you know what I mean? Like there's many things that they could do to make that same amount of money. And one of the doctors laughed and he said, yeah, it's true. There are a lot easier ways to make the amount of money we make. He goes, like, I have friends who are in finance who make the same amount of money They put in their 40, 50 hours a week. Maybe there's 60, 70 hours in the beginning, but once they settle in, it's pretty straightforward. And they laugh at how much I have to work and how difficult it is to make the same amount of money. He said, so money is not ever why you should get into medicine. And I thought that was really interesting.
Well, this goes to something you and I talked about a while ago. When we talked about, you tell musicians, if you can do anything else, do it. And
You
I
do
said,
anything else.
comedians, get
Yeah.
a real job and just do comedy on the side for fun. And then I had a teacher tell me, like, look, you should only get into teaching if you have a passion for teaching. It's everything in life. And this is
Yeah.
cheesy and it's stupid and I get it, but what is your life calling? What is your passion? And it sounds like, just through what you have said, that some of those doctors, it's what they enjoy doing. I don't want to say it's their
Yeah.
calling. I can't speak for them, but something made them do it. Maybe it was, I don't want to be a doctor, so I have money, but they stuck with it. Something in them has they've got it.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's something to be said for that. Do you know what I mean? For understanding that what you're doing has a larger effect on the world at large. And it's actually funny because one of the guys was like, well, what do you do? I said, oh, I'm a musician. They said, I'm not saving lives. He says, yeah, but you are. He said, when people come to a show, maybe it's only a temporary fix, but you allow them to let go of whatever happened beforehand. And in this 45 to 90-minute thing, they're free. They can fall into the music. You can explain things that they need explaining. Like, you can put their emotion into words, help clarify things they believe, or just play something that allows them to dance and have a good time for 90 minutes. You know what I mean? And I thought about that. And for me, having been a musician, that kind of want to escape from my life has never been a thing for me. But I
Yeah.
remember when I was teaching yoga, one of my first yoga teaching gigs was at a gym. It was at a health club. They had class from 7:30 to 9, 3 times a week. And so I went and taught it. And I think I made like $50 a class, maybe. You know what I mean? And one day I went a little bit over because I want to throw in a couple new positions and postures and do some more assists and things like that. And so the relaxation, instead of being like 10 to 12 minutes, was like 5 or 6 minutes. And like 3 or 4 people came up to me at the end of the class, were like, you can't do that. I'm like, what do you mean? And the one guy said to me with a perfectly straight face, dead serious, that 10 minutes is the only time I have to relax all day. You can't take that away from me. And I was like, holy shit. Like, there are people who live in a world in which they are stressed out from the time they wake up to the time they get to yoga class. You know what I mean? It's 7:30 at night. And then when they leave at 9, there's more stress waiting for them at home, and then they fall asleep. And I was like, wow. And it really showed me that, like, I can complain about money. I can complain about, oh, there's no fucking gigs. Like, right now, we all have legitimate shit to complain about. But what I can't complain about is a rampant, rabid desire to, like, erase my life and have a new one. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
even when
Neither one of us
yeah,
is Daniel Stern in City Slickers.
right, exactly. Yeah.
They're telling him, you got a
Yeah.
do-over, and he's like, how's my life look now? I'm divorced. She's going to get wiped out. I lost my job. And they're like, yeah, well, I mean, in the end, I don't have that. You're right. Neither one of us wants to escape.
Yeah. I don't have that thing where, like, I have a need to escape my life. Now, are there things I am actively doing to make it better? Of course. Are there things I need to get in line with and ways in which I need to grow up? Of course. But the basic existence of my life is not something I need to escape from,
Yeah.
like, to that degree. You know what I mean? It's just not my world. And in that way, I feel really lucky. You know what I mean? Like, I feel really lucky that I have a life that is not oppressive. in that way. You know what I mean? Like, because I know people who go to work and they hate their job, but they make good money and they can't get out of it because they have all the things, they have all the trappings that economic success gives you, and those trappings become needs, not just wants. They become, it's like they just become baked into your life in a way that you need them or you believe you do.
You become
You
used to a
know?
certain lifestyle is what it
Yeah,
is. You
yeah.
don't
And
want
now
to
they can't.
downgrade from the Toyota Highlander to the Honda Civic.
Right. Which I wonder if you stop caring what people think, you know, if that's a real thing. Many, particularly growing up, not so much now. Like most of the people I know have money now, drive fancy cars and live in fancy houses and shit like that, right? It's like conspicuous wealth. But when I was growing up, you didn't know who the people in your town were that had the money. You know
Is
what I
that
mean?
because we
Like
were kids though? Because I don't remember paying attention to her. Maybe it's because we were poor, white trash, that it never mattered to me. I didn't, I don't remember noticing who had money until seventh, eighth grade, probably about seventh grade, because that's when I moved to the new town and everybody had these established cliques. And I obviously was not part of the cool clique. So it wasn't until seventh grade that I really started to notice what money was and that we had never had any.
yeah. I mean, when I say little, I'm thinking like 13, 14, 15, right?
I don't know what seventh grade.
Like,
I don't
yeah,
remember.
probably around 13,
Hmm.
somewhere around there. Well, I mean, I just remember going to my boss's house one day. I was working at a hardware store and I went to my boss's house and I was like, wow, this is a nice house. Like, it wasn't huge, it was just nice, quality stuff.
It was just
But he
better than what
drove,
you had, and that you noticed that.
yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah,
had.
and he had, but he wore ordinary clothes. He drove a beat up old station wagon. Like he had a normal watch, not some Rolex. And come to find out a few years later, the guy had millions of dollars in the bank. Like he just wasn't into that whole like I need everybody to see how much money I have because my value as a person comes from my money. Money to him was just a tool and he could save it and use it and it would work for him. But it wasn't something he used to improve his status in life. Do you know what I mean? And I feel like, particularly hip hop culture, like with the, like,
I
I
fucking
got all
just
this
got a
money.
diamond put in his head.
Right, exactly. Right. I got all this money. Let me do all this stuff. But the same thing is true in certain kind of rock and roll culture. It's like, yeah, you wear your dirty jeans, you're this, but you pull up in a Corvette. You
Yeah,
know what I mean? And it's just like, right, there's this thing that says, like, the money, there's like shame attached to not having money
I
that
don't
I
want to
think
go
is
down this path because
unnecessary. You know what I mean?
it's
So it's probably a different, well, for a
yeah.
different
But I
show.
I remember just being not a kid, but a teenager, young adult. I remember when in our 20s and reading about whatever celebrities that had houses in Los Angeles, New York, Chicago, London, Paris, and I'm like, why? Why the fuck do you need
Right.
five houses? I mean,
Right.
it never made sense to me. The idea of great, you get to visit. You say you own 12 houses, you visit once a month, one of every month out of the year. I mean, it just, or you just always have somewhere to go. Like, oh, I'm bored. Let's up and go to Paris. You couldn't get that from you're rich. You couldn't get that from the penthouse suite of a Marriott that you need to. I don't know,
Or a month
extravagance, but
long rental of yeah. There's a lot in there, but that's for a different show.
yeah.
Um,
But so do you have, trying to bring this back to the beginning as we start to close down. Um, would you say that you have less fear now or the same or more? Or do you think you will look at it like a pendulum where, okay, you just went through this experience and so you feel a certain way, but eventually you'll swing and end up in center again? And if that's the case, do you think your center will now be just slightly off to one side or the other, that you'll have changed? Because I don't know how much I changed after my son's experience. I don't know what I was afraid of before that experience, before becoming a parent, having kids. And I don't know what I'm afraid of now, other than Go back to, I think I said Dick Vermeil, the coach of the Rams, who only remembered the failures. Um, I'm trying to, I've got ideas in my head. I don't want to spit them out. Let's go a different path. I think I've talked about this before. There was the Dukakis campaign. There was a staffer for the Dukakis campaign, and they asked him like, "Hey, when did you realize you were going to lose?" And he said, "When we lost." And that means he thought Dukakis, like, up until election days, like, we're going to pull this out. And it's like every poll, everybody knew that Bush was going to win, but Dukakis, his people said no. They were so blinded. They said you can't allow negativity in, even if negativity was reality. And I'm telling you this because when I put it into my own life, I try to be neutral to optimistic. And the fear I have comes in at 3 a.m. when I wonder if anything will ever hit. I remember putting out my first album. Okay, this is going to be a game changer. Nobody gave a fuck. Put out my second album. Like now I'm on album number 7. My next one will be number 7. And I sort of have in the back of my head, I'll put it out. It's just attrition, but nobody's going to give a fuck. I suppose I should see who's at the door, even though I don't fucking want to.
No. All right.
So that my fear is that I will continue to produce because that's what I have to do, write, perform, and that at the end, I mean, because you talk about right now, it's a struggle. It's always a struggle. And say, how do I phrase this now? It's sort of interrupted my flow of thought. Say I'm not the greatest comedian, fine. I also know that I'm not the worst. There should be work out there, and it should be easier to come by instead of having to prove yourself over and over. I wonder when that spot will be, which is, acceptance, like, yeah, this guy gets the job done. Do you have that fear of not getting gigs, or what if it all falls apart, or what are your fears now? Or what I said earlier, do you think that you are off kilter? You'll return to a different center? It's obviously a life-changing experience, but people have life-changing experiences all the time, and then they just return to who they were.
There's a thing that I read where they say that most people, you make as much money as you believe you are worth. And when people make $10,000 to $15,000 more than that, they find a way to squander that $10,000 to $15,000. And when people make $10,000 to $15,000 less than that, that's when they get into hustle mode. But hustle mode only lasts up until you reach that number that you think you deserve, whether that number is 75,000 or 100,000 or 15 or 20,000. I don't know.
I'm going to disagree with it. I'm going to interrupt to say I don't believe that at all, because maybe I'm an egotistical cunt and have no real ability to objectively look at my abilities, but I don't believe I'm worth what I've been making for the past. Maybe like, I believe right now I'm making what I should have made 15 years ago, maybe. But if, again, maybe it's my ego, maybe I'm just a piece of shit, but I do not believe, and I hustle and I send out and it just seems like there's nothing but a series of closed doors or why, you got a TV credit, you can't use you. And so, yeah, I hustle and I believe I'm worth more. So I don't know that I really hate to think I was holding myself back through some.
Well, one of the things that I realized when I was in the hospital, because I didn't sleep for like 6 days. One, I didn't eat either. One, because the hospital food is just atrocious.
Yeah,
it's just the worst. Like, so I wasn't eating, and I wasn't sleeping.
And there were COVID. You couldn't have visitors. So when
I couldn't have visitors
for 3 days, we had people bringing us food, and I could leave and get food, and we didn't eat a fucking thing from the hospital. I think we tried the first meal, like, okay, let's do. Oh no, not eating it.
Yeah. Oh, it was crazy. But it was hard for me to fall asleep.
Yeah, I
because
would
I
imagine.
was afraid. Well, I mean, for a whole host of reasons, but one of them it was mental because I was literally afraid I wouldn't wake up.
Hmm.
Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
and it's kind of silly in retrospect, but when I was sitting there and I was like, God, like it was just weird, right? But being up that long and just listening to podcasts and listening to music and just kind of, spending time just with myself, for hours and hours and hours and hours at a time, I really understood that there are many ways in which I am my own worst enemy. And because much like you, I believe I'm worth more than I get paid. I believe that I have certain talents and gifts that are really useful and that they are underappreciated and things like that. What I also realize is that I'm not taking what is most special about me because it is the thing that's divergent. It's the thing that makes me different from other people. So there's like a natural inclination to want to be part of a community. And by highlighting what is different about me, it puts me a little bit on the outs with my community. Not completely, but a little bit. And I could see how, in certain ways, the thing that I'm most afraid of putting forth is probably the thing that will actually set me free, if
Hmm.
that makes sense. Do you know what I mean?
It
And
does.
so I would not argue with you about your own personal life because who knows, right? But in my world, I can fundamentally say that my experience has taught me that life is too short to be afraid of things. And you know what happens if you put forth the thing that makes you different from every other comic, right? Yeah, you might not be part of this one community, but that's the only buy-in to get up to the next level, right? The next, like, because most of the comics that who are really successful are kind of specialists. You know what I mean? The really successful ones, they're specialists, right? Like I mean, the Chappelles and Bill Burrs and people like that. It's kind of obvious, right? But
Yeah.
like, but really, like, how do you pretend to be Chappelle or Bill Burr? You know what
That's
I
why I
mean?
said that I might not be as good. I didn't use their names, but like, say I'm not the greatest comedian. I'm not. I don't say like, oh, I deserve to be headlining theaters and in movies like them. But at least I should be fucking doing all the clubs. But so I'm
But
like,
I mean,
even
but
if I
what is it?
say if I aim for upper middle of the road, that I think that I should have achieved that. I don't know.
Right. I
I,
guess
I
the
just don't want to make
question
it seem
is,
like I'm so egotistical. Like, fuck Chappelle, I could do what he does. No, he's Chappelle.
but I mean, but like, but there is, there's a thing that you have that makes you unique. There's a thing that you have that nobody else can do, right? There
We're back
is
to
a
city
way,
slickers.
right? Exactly. But there's something true about that. You know what I mean? Like, I'm playing a lot of slide guitar these days, and I hear people say things. When we were in college, I remember taking a bass lesson from this guy, and I said, "What do you do? What are you doing?" He goes, "Oh, I'm going to go get a job." He'd already graduated, and he's going to go get a job. And I was like, "Why?" He goes, "Because I realize I'm not ever going to be Jocko, so I might as well just give up the bass." And I was thinking to myself, "That's dumb." And I knew that at 19. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like at 19, I was aware of the fact that that's an idiotic thing to say because, yeah, I might not ever be Derek Trucks, right? Who's a phenomenal slide player. There's so many of them out there these days, so many great players, but that's okay. You know what I mean? BB King played 5 notes and he's BB King. You know what I mean? Right? Like, find your 5 notes, you
Well, see,
know?
I have that a little bit because we've talked about this
Mm-hmm.
with mental limitations. Is I shifted away from music after the band I was in fell apart because I said, oh, I know I'm not going to be Sting. I'm not going. I don't have the voice. I don't have the talent. And I always thought that I think the example I used is I don't understand Bon Jovi. Like Bon Jovi is comfortable enough to go up to Sting and go, "Oh, I'm a musician too." Whereas, it's like, are you really though? Are you really a musician, John Bon Jovi? And I would be too self-aware to approach Sting and say, "I play bass." Whereas, as much as I know I'm not Chappelle, I would have no problem meeting him and saying, "Oh, I'm a comedian too," or "Burr." Like I don't have that same intimidation. So
Mhm.
that's where comedy became my calling, which is, oh, I feel comfortable enough doing this, even if I don't feel the pressure of I have to be that person or be like them or achieve or have their same talents. I know I'm me and I'm comfortable with
Mhm.
that.
And do you think that that's reflected in your routine?
I get told it is.
Okay. Then I mean, I don't know. I don't know how to gauge that. You know what I mean? Like you know how to gauge it, and maybe the audience does, but I don't know. I know
Mhm.
that I was spending a lot of time whoring myself out for a lot of different gigs that were kind of all fun. Like playing music is fun to me, whether good music, bad music. I like playing music. But when I started doing the thing with Katie and we were writing and then really being able to see music that I had a heavy hand in creating come to life, even when we were in the early stage and we sucked. Like we were terrible. Like it was terrible. Like it really was. The band was loose and sloppy and like we were awful. But we had this thing that no matter how bad we were, people kept on coming out because they're like, you guys got a thing. And what we had was we had fire. Like we had fire and passion and we believed in what we were doing. So even if it was rough around the edges and fucked up and stuff, people still liked it because we just went for it.
Yeah.
Every time we went for it. Like I would always say, the one rule we have here is we never phone it in. We do not phone it in. That is the only rule I have is we don't phone it in. And that's what we're known for. We don't fucking phone it in. You know what I mean? And the times that we have, they've been like the worst shows ever. You know what I mean? Like just fucking
Well,
terrible.
yeah, that's just
You
a
know
given.
what I
That's what it's
mean?
going to be like.
Yeah. But we fly without a net. You know what I mean? You do it without a net, you don't phone it in. That's what you do. And I feel like that wasn't necessarily something that I was comfortable doing in other situations. I don't know why, because it's not like I can't be a sideman and also not phone it in. But when you show up to a gig and it's like there's some half-ass rehearsal, you know what I mean, for some artists who it's like their vanity project and the songs are remarkably mediocre. It almost feels like that's where my ego would become my problem. Like, why do you deserve the best of me when you're not even giving the best yourself,
Yeah,
right? Now, that's my ego because you should always give your best, right? Like,
absolutely.
if
Why not
you're
take the
like,
moment to
right,
shine in a
exactly.
less
And
than
I was
stellar situation?
just young and stupid. But
Yeah.
I would ask you the same thing. Like, are you being fearless when you get out there? And if so, then that's all you can do. Like, all you can do is get out there and be fearless and connect with the audience and have some kind of like people buy emotion. They don't actually care. Like they care if your music is good or not good, but what they really want is does it make them feel something?
Yeah.
Do you
How
know what
do
I mean? Like that's really what they buy is emotion. Now, is it easier to sell emotion with a good melody that's sung into and over some nice chords? Yeah, it's easier.
yeah.
But how many songs do you listen to where the singer like back to old records, man, pitchy ass singers and people making mistakes before they could punch in stuff.
Oh,
Like some of that
I've
stuff is just terrible,
I've had this
but you love
conversation.
it.
I've had this thought in this conversation a million times. Like American Idol has done so much damage to music because
Yeah.
it's about perfection. Whereas you take someone like Tom Petty and you put him on American Idol, and he's got that nasally voice. Is he going to advance? No. Liz Fair? No. Anthony Kiedis? No. But are they perfect for what they do? Fuck yes. Would
Right.
anyone insult
I
Tom
mean,
Petty or Anthony
would
Kiedis? Anthony
Aretha?
Kiedis can't sing, but he
I
is
mean,
fantastic in the Red Hot Chili
right.
Peppers.
Absolutely. But I mean, Aretha, Nina Simone. Would Nina Simone pass round one of American Idol? Maybe.
Yeah.
I doubt it. You know what I mean? Billie Holiday? Like, yeah, I mean, yeah,
Hmm.
the examples but I mean, Jimi Hendrix. I mean, he called up his dad and he goes, Dad, I want to start singing. The dad's like, really? He goes, yeah, I heard this guy named Bob Dylan. He can't sing for shit, and everybody loves him. So, and he writes these really cool songs, and I dig his music, but he can't really sing for shit. So I'm gonna start singing. And Jimmy was never confident about his voice, ever. He never thought he was a good singer. But somehow you listen to Jimi Hendrix, you don't go, God, what a shitty singer. You
Yeah,
think that guy sounds like Jimi Hendrix. He just does what he does. You know what I mean? So my question is, what is that? Because I think for him, his greatest fear was being a singer. That was the thing he had to overcome. To lift him up to the next level, he had to get over that fear of singing. And he did. And that's what allowed him to become the artist we know as Jimi Hendrix. But without that, he just would have been a side man for other people. The question is, are you facing whatever fear you have when you get on stage?
Basically, that might be what you're asking, but what I'm hearing is, Nathan, start singing your dick jokes.
Try it. See what happens. Sing a couple.
I doubt you have any gigs coming up because of your circumstances. When will you be able to play, or what is the recovery process? Let's wrap this up. What do you have going on?
For me, I have another couple weeks of just kind of chilling, binge watching stuff. Like I watched all of Expanse.
All
like
of it?
every
Jesus,
season.
we're still on season 2, and I told you to watch it
dude.
after
I
we
mean,
were.
because I can't.
Yeah, you can't do anything. We watch one a night.
You know what happened? I felt great. I feel great. I feel fine, and I just pushed myself too hard, and I could feel that I pushed myself too hard, and I was like, ah,
So
I'm not done healing.
Like,
so now I got to take it back another step. But I think in another 2 to 3 weeks, like another week, I'm fine. Another 2 to 3 weeks, I'll be great. You know what I mean? But we have, I think we have a Zoom gig.
Now let's interrupt. This is the Katie Henry Band.
Yes, we're working on a new record. We're working on a new record, so that's exciting. That's where most of our time is taken up, is just kind of sifting through all the material we have.
Because that you can do.
And,
you can listen, you can practice.
Yeah, and
okay.
Yeah, and so we got to cut that down to like 15 to 20 songs, out of which we'll pick 12. You know.
Yep.
So we're doing that. We have a Zoom gig for this company that just puts on performances. That's in April sometime, and then we have a festival in June.
April.
Yeah, we have. Yeah, but I think the next actual gig we have is in April.
Right.
Like real official, like this is a thing. You know, I think it's April.
I got
our summer's getting
a couple weeks.
Yeah.
Your grandma's old haunting grounds, February 25, 26, and 27 at the Funny Stop in Cuyahoga Falls. So anybody that is anywhere near Cuyahoga Falls, anyone listening in Cleveland, it's only 45 minutes to the south roughly, but yeah, I'll throw traffic up for that. I'm going to close on this. I thought it and then I forgot it, and I'm so glad I remembered it, because it is, my wife was more worried about you than I was, because again, maybe I went into denial mode, like, oh, he's going to be fine. He's going to get his heart surgery. Like, heart surgery it's a big fucking deal. But
it is. But they do it now. But they do it 3 times. They do it 3 times a day now. You know what I mean? Like, it's a big deal, but they kind of got it. They know what they're doing. You know.
Well, those 3 days that you were asleep and recovering, she's like, has he texted you yet? Has he let you know he's okay? And I'm like, no, he's fine. No news is good news. And she said something, I don't remember what. She said, well, how do you know he's okay? How do you know that he's fine? And I said, without thinking, well, because if he had died, he would have stopped by and let me know. And it was like, it just came out of my mouth, but it felt right. Like, I don't believe in God. I don't believe in an afterlife. But at the same time, I had this strong feeling like, well, if something went south and he was not with us anymore, he would have at least had the decency to stop and tell me that he was dead. So I'm assuming he's alive, because I haven't heard otherwise from him. And Lydia thought I was crazy, but at the time I meant it. When I said that, I absolutely meant that you would have stopped by and let me know in some way or another. So
yeah.
All right, my friend.
Haunted you for a few minutes.
Yeah.
Every day. You know?
Continued recovery. I will talk to you without the voyeurism of anybody watching.
Yeah, man.
In a couple of days, and we will record again after.
Yeah, I look forward to it.
Good to see
let's
your
do it.
face. Good to hear
Yeah,
your
you too,
voice.
man. Yeah,
And
stay out of trouble.
goodwin.com, katiehenrymusic.com,
Absolutely.
nathankimmel.com. Share the video with other people. Spread it around.
Yeah, man.
Bye,
Yeah, it's good
everyone.
to see you, man. See ya.